Beth. Let's call the meeting to order here at 10:01 a.m. And I've got my agenda all set here, just a click away. Beth, will you please do the roll call?
Sure. Bertucci.
Present.
And
Oh,
Zipline.
Here.
We have some very similar names on this committee. Martins.
Here.
McNulty.
Here.
Heidi Smith.
Here.
Robin Smith. Maybe that's who we're missing. And Tucci.
Here.
And for CCS, we have Rebecca Malinowski, Deborah Bushmeyer, and Beth Stonebrenner. And it looks like Robin is joining. Morning, Robin.
Good morning, Robin. We've got you for the roll call, so we're on to number 3. Does anyone have any additions to our agenda? Okay, just check the participants list here to see if there's anyone from the public. Don't see any. So we'll move on. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the March 25th, 2021 Long Range Planning Committee meeting.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Karen. Thank you,
Second.
Catherine. Any changes or discussion? Okay, Beth, would you do the vote, please?
Bertucci, sorry.
I wasn't at the meeting, so I'll just abstain.
Okay. Danzig Lyons,
Aye.
Martins,
Aye.
McNulty,
Yes.
Heidi Smith,
Yes.
Robin Smith,
I wasn't at the meeting either.
and Tucci.
Yes. Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so the motion carries. Next on the agenda, we're actually going to do a little switcheroo on you guys. We're going to start next with the member fee formula review, and I'll turn it over to Rebecca, please.
So you don't have anything in your packet from this, largely because it's gotten wrapped into previous number 6, new number 7. So in budget and finance this year, by request of Pam Leffler, we were going to look at whether it makes sense to review the member fee formula from an equity lens to determine if we should put more of a focus on like a library's ability to pay, whereas we're pretty heavy on an even split. And in talking with budget and finance, it was sort of like a lukewarm, like they weren't like, yeah, let's do it. And they weren't like, no way. And Mick, our treasurer, with amazing alacrity said, I think this is a question for long range planning to see how that fits into our strategic plan and our plan for membership growth. So it was going to be a separate agenda item. But then as I was working on the implementation plan for this year, part of that is one of my suggested goals is assessing barriers to membership. So if we determine that the fee structure is a barrier to membership, then I would say that we should take that on as part of the plan to reduce barriers to membership. So unless anyone really wants to talk about this today, I would recommend that we table it pending some additional research, but I'm happy to discuss it.
Does anyone have any questions or comments for Rebecca about this topic?
So it's very clever to send it to this committee instead of finance. And I think it would be very difficult to discuss just in concept without anything to really have studied over or think about.
All right, so if there's no objections to moving on from that conversation, we'll go on to implementation plan for fiscal year 22-23 review. And again, I'll turn it over to Rebecca.
So in your packet, I did provide both an update on where we're at for our goals for fiscal year 21-22, since some of those we are recommending we carry over into 22-23, and then some suggested goals for the for the new fiscal year. I did also include a link to the strategic plan. When we put together the strategic plan, we said that we would evaluate it annually to make sure that in this like very rapidly changing environment, it still met our needs. I don't have any recommended changes at this time, and was going to focus on the strategic directions. That said, if anyone does, happy to discuss those as well. Oh, am I freezing? This is not my favorite. Okay, so this document that is up on my screen is what was in your packet. I've made a couple of changes in red after some additional discussion with staff, extending the timeline on this evaluation of cataloging and acquisitions workflows because of the development timeline for LEAP. We want to look at the staff client, and we also want to look at LEAP, and some of those LEAP functionality is not coming until closer to the end of this calendar year. So my original timeline of February was very ambitious for Rachel to have all of that squared away with the new workflow in a couple of months. And then one of our internal goals, which I've added to this document, is evaluating our telephone notice options. It's kind of a sub-project of the office move, since we currently have 8 physical phone lines coming into our office. Those are logistically cumbersome to maintain, and we have some new options coming. The timeline on here, one thing that we can consider is a new product from Innovative called Innovative Phone Alerts. But there's no timeline for when that will be released. So we need to have a plan before we move offices, obviously. So we may or may not include Innovative phone notices in the Innovative product for phone alerts as an option there. And then I just wanted to add some clarification. This section of other projects to consider, I feel like based on workload and staffing, the content that we have on pages 1 and 2 is an ambitious plan for next year. And that these would be, if this committee was like, oh, I actually don't like, this project, or I don't think this is an important priority now, let's swap it out for, these are sort of our alternates. If the committee wanted to know, well, what would we do if we weren't doing what you've proposed on pages 1 and 2. So I will not read this document to you, but I will pause to take questions or discussion and turn it back to Heidi for facilitation.
Okay, questions, anyone?
Yeah, I just have a quick
Suggestions?
question. Is this available to us? Because when I went in, it wasn't updated. The one
Oh,
that's
yeah,
attached.
yes, with the red text.
Right.
I just did that this morning.
Okay.
So I will resend it out for sure.
Great.
And I'll scroll back down so you can see this text as well.
I have a few comments, I guess, and a question.
Please.
Okay. So I know I've seen centralized cataloging brought up over the years. Is this something that the members are asking for, or what's the motivation for pursuing this concept?
Yes, so we have gotten several requests, one of which has come repeatedly from our pals over at Evanston to provide additional cataloging services. In our previous work around this, we were looking at sort of project-based cataloging and what would the workload look like if we were going to do like world languages or local history, sort of these like specialized collections.
Right.
As we were doing that evaluation, our pals over at Rails have launched essentially that same service that's open to all Rails members, regardless of consortium membership. So in talking with Nancy George, who's the cataloger over at Rails, they currently have plenty of capacity. So for us to duplicate that service seems unnecessary. So we didn't look super seriously previously at, could we take on like more of the workflow? And I might ask Deborah to jump in here to talk about functionality a little bit. With the new development in Leap, there's going to be some options for Baker and Taylor integration that essentially like you order your cart in Baker and Taylor and then everything is just like, bam, done. And the records are all in Polaris with very minimal interaction. So, if a library wanted to pursue a workflow like that, could CCS provide additional support in terms of like quality control and enhancing those records, when before you may have had to have more people with hands-on. We don't know what that looks like yet because it's not built. And then there's also, so outside of centralized cataloging, which like we have had member discussion, like member requests to evaluate, with the change to Leap or with the addition of new features in Leap, the current development for bringing in bib records doesn't match with our current recommended workflow. So right now we really recommend folks do batch loads from OCLC into Leap. I might be getting confused with Find More Illinois, which is also fine. But essentially, does doing work with Z3950, how much does that hamper a workflow as opposed to doing batch loads is another question I would like to get answered, because it could open up some opportunities for us beyond what we're working with now. So it's sort of like multi-pronged. And I would say for sure that centralized cataloging is not something that I'm like, oh, we're definitely going to do this.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is more about the bibliographic database than the broader. It's not like things would be all sent to CCS, processed and sent out.
Oh,
That's not
correct.
the cataloging
Yes.
you're talking about.
Yes,
But-
100% correct. Yeah, regardless of what happened moving forward, I would not envision any workflow where physical materials are coming to CCS prior to hitting library shelves. Everything would go to libraries. If CCS were to provide cataloging support, it would be like via surrogates or other options. We do not want your materials, and we certainly would not be processing them.
Mhm. So then my other input on that, I know that this could very well make sense in terms of the bibliographic database, because our current model is everyone does it on their own, and then there's a certain amount of time and commitment spent in cleaning things up and making them the same, if you will. According to the standards people are supposed to be abiding by. So I guess the insight I would have is that group of employees in libraries are have very strong feelings or beliefs about different things, and they can be a bit cantankerous, frankly. So I think part of the process of investigating also needs to include discussions with those, which groups is it?
The cataloger, like CAM and acquisitions and scrap. Mhm.
Yeah. I think it's really critical to bring them along, to make them part of the thought and the solution, because we'll have better luck with getting buy-in from them if they're part of it. And I know that's a big ask because of the kind of people that tend to be catalogers, even though I was one initially, but
Thank you, Kathy.
I know of what I speak, but Anyway,
Thank you, Catherine. And I see that Karen had her hand up to add comment as well to this discussion.
I was raising my hand. I was clapping. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I wanted to say thank you so much to Rebecca and the team at CCS for always listening to cries for help and or suggestions from Evanston. And I'm really glad that over time, as time has gone by, that there are some different options to fulfill this work, because it is, Catherine's absolutely right. I mean, it's a special skill that is increasingly rare. And as we're inviting our residents to tell us what language they speak at home, along with Spanish language materials and the Mandarin materials that we've been getting donated, I expect that we're probably going to be expanding the world languages that we collect. And it does us no good to find great materials if we can't catalog them and get them on the shelf. So just having CCS in that space, thinking about where the gap is in options is wonderful. I can tell you we got a shipment of Spanish language materials that need original cataloging, and it's been months trying to find even a vendor to respond to say they would do it. So it's a need, and we just need to find the best way, the most cost-effective way, and the most efficient way. And sometimes the consortium can really drive that conversation. So I just thank you.
so Karen, that Rails solution has not panned out for Evanston then?
We're going, at least in this instance, we're going with Backstage to do the original cataloging.
So Rails and the Cataloging Maintenance Center, which is part of IHLS, Rails of the South, they both offer original cataloging. CMC does more like big project stuff, like they'll come in and do like someone's whole genealogy collection. Rails initially requested that folks limit their submissions to 3 to 5 items a month, although they have now lifted that.
What?
Yeah. Well, so because it's literally just NINSI. It's one cataloger, but I did recently learn they also outsource to Backstage. So if NINSI doesn't have the expertise she needs to complete a record or something, they'll send it to Backstage Library Works. The issue with the Rails solution is sort of, as Karen said, if you get a big box of stuff, Rails is saying like a 4 to 6 week turnaround on some of this stuff. So it is really intended to like provide assistance, whereas it would be like, oh, well, like Evanston has someone who can do this cataloging, which I know they do, but they have limited bandwidth. So yeah, it is a limited service they're offering, but also I will tell you, they've only gotten 53 items as of 2 weeks ago. So send your stuff to Rails.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd be sending it with that kind of turnaround time, frankly.
Yeah, I
Because-
think it's definitely designed for less in-demand materials. Like you get your Guadalajara Book Fair order, there's not necessarily 17 holds on them. It's just you want to add it for browsing. So
Right. Or if you're doing a collection development project, which, I mean, it sounds like one of Karen's team may have done that. They've got a box of Spanish language materials. You don't now want to spend 8 weeks waiting for that material to be rolled out.
That's a great
And
point.
so if Backstage becomes one of the options of choice, I don't know how much interest or time CCS would be willing to spend negotiating on behalf of the consortium. And only you can decide that.
yeah, I think that's a great option to explore as well.
That is a good idea, because it doesn't sound like the Rails solution is. I probably wouldn't go that route. I'm like, what? No, I'm not buying that service.
So it sounds like from the discussion that this is a worthy goal, and that the way it's worded seems to reflect the spirit in which it was brought forward. The one thing I would add is that I love that it focuses on efficiencies, or it includes the word efficiencies, because For me, that's something that I would love to have a clearer understanding about how much back and forth a record has pinging between libraries where, well, I'll just review it and tweak it a little. Well, I'll just review it and tweak it a little. And how much of our time is spent doing that. And then the other, as Catherine mentioned, the standards that people are supposed to be following, whether it's a committee of our people, whether it's CCS, some sort of facilitation for accountability. And then about paying. Those are my, hello, baby. Whose baby was that? Oh, yeah, Rebecca's. Mine are here. They're sleeping right now. So hopefully they didn't notice that, or they would have chimed in. They would have chimed in. Shall we move on from the cataloging goal to talk of others, or any other comments on this? And just jump in. No need to raise hands. Just jump right in, gang, okay?
I want to be sure we have a good balance of, and this is something I've been saying for years, when we bring new members on, I know there's a lot of time and energy that goes into new members, and there's still the idea of trying to attract additional members, that we are also looking at enhancements, and the cataloging is one, but enhancements for existing members. And I'll just use my Kohl's example. For years, I get things from Kohl's saying, if you get a Kohl's credit card, I'm going to give you 50% off. And I'm always saying, but I've been a Kohl's member for 20 years. Where's my 50% off? So it's not just discounts, but services. And I think I'm a little concerned that the whole use of data and I think especially that first one, I understand that's on the third page, that we all want to be able to use our data better. And how do we do that? And how do we learn from others? And I understand that there's maybe CCS can't even see it. That to me is a benefit of the kind of system that we're in, not just the consortium, but also an automated system that we should be able to get more helpful information out of that easily.
Agreed.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, additions, questions? Well, I will say that the one thing that I don't want to put a stop on the whole process or anything like that, but I was reading through and reviewing the information and got to the part about moving and kind of then went back and looked and said, is this too much? I'm always overdoing it. Like, that's just my approach in general, right? You're like, hey, don't hold people back, right? Set them free, let them loose on the thing. And when there's not the, feeling of, oh, we didn't make it, or that accountability of, oh, we didn't make it, then that's okay, right? To like dream big. I just thought I would just share that one comment that, if it does feel like an ambitious goal, with the idea that you're also moving and everything that goes into that. As you mentioned when we started the phone lines, there are probably going to be other things that come up like that. You're like, oh man, we need to figure this out while we're doing the move. So, I can speak for myself that I trust your judgment and that you wouldn't bring a plan forward that, that was beyond the capability of the team. But I just also wanted to allow some space for the idea that some things maybe could be optional, or some things maybe could have a, the time frame be flex. But really, I would defer to you on that, Rebecca. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, it is a lot. Like when I was writing it, I was like, well, there's not very many like things on here, but each thing is pretty big. These are all pretty big goals. I do feel like they're pretty well distributed. There's a lot of like project suggestions that I was like, oh, Mieko would be great at that. Like that would be great for Mieko. But we also want to give her the opportunity to lead a library ad because it is such a great project management experience. So you'll notice she only is the owner of one project, whereas I think if you ask Mieko, she could do 6 projects. But we're going to rein her in. So I do think the work is pretty well distributed. Beth is really our amazing lead on the office move, and that will really be a lot for Beth and Marcin and me. Whereas the other projects on here are largely for member services. We will be down a staff member for a couple of months, but we've adjusted workloads with that in mind. So I 100% agree, Heidi. It is very ambitious. We did tweak the dates a little. And I know internally, I'm often reminding staff, like, if you need adjustments to your deadlines, like, let me know, let's talk about it. And I don't, so far, I have not felt a lot of external like pressure from governing board of like, well, you said it was going to be this date and it didn't happen. So like no raises for the staff. So I feel good with like a big dream. Listen, if that, we'll be paring back our goals. The team works really hard. I do think that this is a team that really thrives on having something big to shoot for. And the more I tell them to relax, the more they're like, no, we're going to do 18 more projects. So I feel good about this.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to the discussion? Well, if there's nothing further, Rebecca, do you have anything else we ought to cover today?
No, if you're comfortable with this, if we could get a motion to like accept these as our strategic directions and goals for 22-23, then we'll incorporate them into staff goals as we're doing our evaluations and planning for next year.
Okay, fantastic. So would you summarize the specific motion for us? And then I'm sure we'll have people jump in at the bit.
Oh, sure. We can move to accept the fiscal year 2022-2023 strategic directions and goals as amended since we've added this extra guy in.
Thank you, Josephine. Thanks, Diane. And I don't think there's any further discussion. So Beth, we'll turn it to you for the roll call, please.
Okay. Bertucci,
Yes.
Danzig Lyons,
Yes.
Martins,
Yes.
McNulty,
Yes.
Heidi Smith,
Yes.
Robin Smith,
Yes.
and Tucci.
Yes.
And I see Cindy Rademacher.
Yes.
Thank you, Cindy.
I'm so sorry, Cindy. I didn't have my screen adjusted. I didn't notice when you joined us. I apologize. I'm sure Beth got it though.
No, and I was just thinking, oh my gosh, did we even send this to Cindy? So I think that was a miss on my part. I apologize for that, Cindy.
What, the packet? The packet?
Hmm.
Yeah, I was looking for it, but no, that's okay. I was just 5 minutes late, so yeah.
Thank you so much. Apologies, Cindy.
Oh, not at all. It was very interesting. I appreciate hearing everything that's coming. It's very exciting.
Thank you. Well, if there are no objections, then I've heard different ways. I've heard where it's cool to just say, I'm going to adjourn the meeting unless anybody has an objection. So let's do that at 10:30. Okay, good. Nodding heads. Thank you so much, everyone.